So Google Forms is extremely easy to use for assessments ranging from just a real quick check for understanding to kind of quiz test sort of things. So one way to do that is to start right here in Google Drive, and we would go to New and then come down here to More and Google Forms. You can worry about this stuff. I'm just going to click over here and it's going to start me with a blank form. So this is what it looks like when you first start one. Probably one of the first things you're going to want to do is to give it a name. That way back out in, the reason why we might want to do that is because then back out in this folder, you won't just have a bunch of untitled documents or untitled forms, which makes things confusing. So one of the first things that you'll want to do is decide, because you can see here by default it's going to ask them for their email address. We actually don't need to have them fill that in. Instead, what we can do is right up here in the settings right away, under General, I can say that I want to collect email addresses and that I want to restrict it to users in the Malone Central School District. And again, because this is an assessment, I probably also want to say I want to limit it to one response. They can only take the quiz once. And then I'm going to hit save. I'm going to come back in here in a few minutes, but that's good enough for now. So now you notice that the email thing has disappeared because now it's telling them this is already collecting your email address. So here's a question, and by default, the first one that it throws on here is a multiple choice question, but you'll see that we have some other choices that we can do. Honestly, for quizzes, this stuff up here is what you're probably going to use most of the time. So you can do a multiple choice. That's where they pick just one. Checkbox would be where you can actually say, pick all that apply. A drop down, same thing as multiple choice in the sense that you can only pick one. It's just if you have a lot of choices for something, this saves some space on the screen because it's not all of the choices showing up at once. And then up at the top, we have your written response. So the difference between the two is just if I choose short response, they have one line that's going to show up. And if I choose paragraph, when you actually see what this looks like, it just gives you kind of a bigger text box. I don't believe, even if you pick short answer, I don't believe it actually is going to cut them off. It just means they can't see as much of what they're writing at one time. When you are ready to add another question, you just come over here, click that button, and again, pick what kind of question you want to do. You can start rearranging questions. You can use the little drag bar here and move them around if you need to. You can add sections, so if it's a longer assessment, you want to break it up into pieces. And it's important that I point this out. When I say break it up in pieces, it just means break it up in pieces on the screen. Make sure your students understand that if they start an assessment in Forms, you can't stop and then come back to it. And what I mean by that is you can't decide, I've got something else to do. I'm going to turn my Chromebook off and then come back and I'll finish this later. There's going to be a blue submit button at the end. If you've filled out any kind of survey in this district, you've done a Google form, that little blue submit button that's at the bottom. If I am in the middle of one of these forms and I close the tab before I hit the blue submit button, everything is gone. It hasn't saved anything, so I would have to start over. So it's good to make sure your kids understand that. Now, as far as the quiz thing goes, at this point, this is not set up actually to be a quiz. And the reason I know that is because there's nowhere where it's asking me what the right answer is to whatever these questions are. In order to make it a quiz, I need to come back up here into the settings, come to this tab that says quizzes, and then change this slider to say that I want to make this a quiz. And you'll notice that if the students are on Chromebooks, I can turn this into locked mode quiz, which means that they can't go to another tab. Once they open it and start it, it takes all the tabs and stuff away. They actually have to finish it and hit submit before it'll let them go to a different tab. Release their grade, what that means is if I leave it here, as long as it's all objective questions like multiple choice, it's going to grade it for me, and it will automatically tell them what they got as soon as they hit submit. If I want to have the whole class take it first, though, before I let them know what they got, then I'm going to want to change that, and then I will manually, when I'm done, I'll tell the system, okay, tell them what their grades are, and they're going to get an email. And then you can see down here when they get that email, or whether it's immediately, do you want them to see these things? So for instance, if this is something I'm going to want to go over with them, if I was doing this in class, maybe I don't want them to see the correct answers because I want them to talk about it, think it through, kind of rethink their answers before they just know what the right answer is. Or maybe in this case, with like a remote teaching situation, maybe I want them to be able to see their correct answers right away. So then I hit save. And now you'll notice that in this question, now there's this little area down here that says answer key. So I would click on that, and it's going to ask me however many choices here. It's going to ask me which one of these is the right answer and how many points is this question worth. So I can change that point value. Okay. So again, I'm just going to do the same thing down through for all of my questions. Now, what about subjective short answer questions? Those you have to manually grade. So this is why, like, if you have subjective questions in there, it doesn't make really a lot of sense to leave this set to immediately release the grade, because there isn't going to be one. You might as well put it to manual, because you're going to have to go in and you're going to have to grade these. Okay, it will give you the option of doing, like, okay, the correct answer is blue, okay, to whatever my question is that I haven't written here. The problem with using autocorrect for these kinds of questions is it has to be exactly that. So if the student capitalizes it, nope, that's not the right answer. If they accidentally put the E and then the U, nope, that's not the right answer. They have to have exactly what you type. So I honestly, for anything that they're typing, I really don't like the idea of using the auto, having it correct it. I would rather come in here and correct that myself, which is what you can do if you don't put a correct answer in. So I would say just leave your short answers alone and then come back and correct it, and it'll still correct all of the other objective questions for you, but you can then manually correct that, and it'll then give you a grade for the whole quiz once you've done that. Okay? Now, as far as how you get this to your students, honestly, the easiest way to do this is through Google Classroom. And in fact, we can save this whole drive step if we're using Google Classroom as well. So let me jump over to Google Classroom for a second, and I'll jump into a demo class here. If I go to the classwork tab in my Google Class, I can do create, and then one of the options is a quiz assignment. So when I click on that, it's actually going to take me in, and now I can click on this and I'm right back into my normal editor. The nice thing is it's already over here. It's got everything set up, so I can just say, yeah, I want this to be locked mode. Yes, I want to import the grade into my classroom gradebook in Google Classroom. I can, if I've got multiple classes, when I get done writing my quiz, I can check the boxes and say, like, I want all of these classes to take it, or whichever ones. I can even differentiate. So if I'm saying, like, this class is going to take it and I've got 10 kids, this could be a remediation assignment. So I could just give it to specific students and not to everyone. Again, give it due date. I can assign a topic so it groups things together. I can add a rubric, which is one of the newer features in Google Classroom. And I can also add, and this is for all assignments, I can run originality reports, which is their system that they've come out with to help you look for plagiarism. So I'm not going to go through it right now, so I can't actually go ahead and hit the assign button, but I could hit assign when I'm done, and it'll immediately put that out into Classroom. So any kid that goes to Classroom, they're going to get an email also telling them that your teacher has posted a new assignment. But if they're in Classroom, they'll immediately be able to see and take that quiz. The other option is if I click the box next to the schedule or the assign button, I can save it as a draft, so if I need to keep working on it later before I give it to them, I can. The other thing I can do is schedule it. So I could kind of, if I've got a chunk of time and I want to get a bunch of stuff ready for my kids, but I don't want them to have access to it all right now, I could use this to schedule which assessments go out to them or which assignments go out to them and which days and times. Okay? Super easy to use, like I said, and again, it's nice that all of that grading is done for you. That grading automatically shows up in Classroom. You get a really nice snapshot. You get to see all of your students, all of their grades for them. You can adjust grades if you need to, but pretty handy to use. Okay, so as always, if you have questions or run into any issues, don't hesitate to let me know.